The universe had been holding its breath for this moment, when human fire would collide with crystalline perfection and ignite something that would rewrite the fundamental laws of desire across every star system in the galaxy. Alden's transport screamed through alien atmosphere like a comet-carrying prophecy, each torn hull plate peeling away to reveal the genetic destiny blazing within. This was no accident. This was cosmic orchestration. Metal shrieked against physics that bent reality around his presence. The ship's death throws carving blazing scars across landscapes that pulsed with living light. Every impact sent shockwaves through crystal formations that had slumbered for millennia, their surfaces transforming from dormant stone into something that hummed with anticipation, so intense it made the air itself ache with need. The planet's harmonic resonance shifted from ancient melodies into frequencies that spoke of intelligence vast and hungry, and suddenly, impossibly, aroused. Energy cascaded through translucent spires like liquid starlight, each pulse synchronized with something the crystalline structures recognized, a signature written in the quantum fabric of space-time itself, a beacon designed to awaken sleeping gods of desire. Alden's consciousness flickered between agony and something darker, more primal, as his body slammed against the pilot's harness. Ribs cracked under forces that should have shattered bone and spirit, but humans carried their deathworld birthright in every cell. Forged in violence, tempered by impossible odds, evolved into apex predators, who took personal offense when the universe tried to claim them before they were ready to be claimed. His vision blurred as emergency systems painted the wreckage in hellish crimson, each pulse matching the rhythm of his heart, as if the ship itself had become extension of his cardiovascular system. Through shattered viewports, an impossible landscape stretched before him, vast crystalline cathedrals that caught photons and transformed them into colors that had no earthly names, each hue carrying frequencies that made his bones ache with recognition his conscious mind couldn't process. He was alive when physics demanded obliteration, breathing when atmospheric composition should have boiled his blood from the inside out. The realization struck him with electric clarity as he forced his battered body upright, muscles protesting every movement. Each inhalation filled his lungs with something that tasted of ozone and liquid desire, sweet corruption that rewrote his cellular structure with every breath. Energy flowed through him like molten honey, awakening receptor sites that evolution had never intended, neural pathways sparking to life in response to atmospheric conditions that spoke directly to the most primitive parts of his brain. His human physiology was adapting to alien biochemistry in ways that defied every biological law he knew, transforming him into something more than merely human with each passing second. Something in this world was claiming him on a molecular level, preparing his flesh and spirit for an encounter that would shatter every assumption about what it meant to be human among the infinite stars. The anticipation coiling through his chest felt electric, dangerous, inevitable, like standing on the edge of a cliff, and knowing that the fall would either destroy him or teach him how to fly. Movement flickered at the edge of his vision, graceful and deliberate and predatory in its otherworldly beauty. She emerged from the crystal song like temptation given flesh and breath and devastating purpose, her presence bending the fundamental laws of reality in ways that made his vision blur with more than trauma. Every step she took seemed to reshape space itself, as if the universe had been crafted specifically to frame her entrance into his existence. Leora moved through the harmonic formations with fluid grace that spoke of power beyond mortal comprehension, translucent robes flowing around curves that belonged in legends of fallen angels. The fabric clung to her form like crystallized desire, revealing glimpses of skin that pulsed with inner luminescence, alabaster perfection that seemed to contain captured galaxies, each pulse synchronized with the rhythm of his frantically beating heart. Her beauty struck him like a physical blow, driving the air from his lungs and replacing it with something that tasted of starlight and sin. Hair like liquid mercury cascaded over shoulders bare, except for gossamer that moved as if stirred by solar winds, catching alien starlight and reflecting it back in patterns that made his pupils dilate with more than simple appreciation. But it was her eyes that stopped his heart completely, vast depths that held the birth and death of entire star systems. Ancient wisdom wrapped in desperate hunger that fixed on him with recognition deeper than conscious thought, more fundamental than species barriers. The moment their gazes met, the universe shifted into a new configuration of possibility and need. Her body went rigid, as if lightning had struck her nervous system, every muscle tensing as biological imperatives, older than civilization, flooded her consciousness. A sound escaped her throat, part gasp, part cry of fulfillment, part sob of relief so profound it spoke of cycles spent searching for something she had never dared hope to find. The crystalline formations around them began to resonate with frequencies that made the air itself sing, their harmonic response building into symphony that Alden felt in his bones, his blood, his very DNA. Energy cascaded from her skin like aurora fire, painting impossible colors across the alien landscape as her people's most sacred and dangerous ritual activated without warning or consent. What is happening to me? Her voice was music made manifest, silk over steel with undertones that bypassed his ears entirely and spoke directly to the primitive centers of his brain. Underneath its ethereal beauty lay something raw and desperate and utterly female, needs so profound it made his chest tighten with sympathetic ache. She pressed trembling hands to her chest, breathing rapid and shallow as her species' evolutionary programming responded to his presence with overwhelming biological imperative. The light emanating from her flesh grew brighter with each heartbeat, pulsing in rhythm with something Alden couldn't identify, until he realized it matched his own cardiovascular rhythm with mathematical precision. The resonance, she stumbled toward him, movements uncertain, as if she were learning to navigate a body suddenly transformed by forces beyond understanding. Her usual grace gave way to something more vulnerable, more human, as whatever was happening to her rewrote the basic parameters of her existence. It has never been this powerful, never with an alien. Alden forced himself upright on legs that shook with more than crash trauma, drawn by invisible threads that seemed to connect every atom of his being to hers. When he spoke, his voice came out rougher than expected, raw with emotions he couldn't name, but felt with intensity that bordered on pain. I can feel you, in my head, in my blood, like you're rewriting me from the inside out. The confession escaped him unbidden, truth pulled from his core by forces that made resistance not just impossible, but irrelevant. The air between them crackled with visible energy, creating patterns that reminded him of synaptic firing, of neural pathways forming connections at speeds that should have been lethal to both their nervous systems. Through the psychic link blazing to life between them, Leora experienced flashes of his memories, like lightning illuminating a landscape she had never imagined. His species, chaotic human creativity that approached problems with directness bordering on madness, minds that refused to accept limitations imposed by hostile reality. They had clawed their way to the stars through pure stubbornness, carrying their planet's predatory nature into the cosmos with unrepentant pride. His neural patterns were beautiful chaos incarnate, wild innovation coupled with refusal to bow before any force in the universe, creativity that viewed obstacles as puzzles to be solved rather than barriers to be respected. Her Chthoni consciousness was order and harmony personified, elegant solutions flowing like crystalline music through problems that would drive lesser minds to madness. But his human chaos was synchronizing with her ordered frequencies in ways that created entirely new harmonics, resonance patterns that spoke of evolution itself, reaching toward something unprecedented, where chthoni bonding enhanced existing neural pathways. This connection with alien creativity was building structures in her brain that had never existed before. Synaptic architecture that defied every model her people had developed over millennia of studying their own consciousness. She could feel her empathic abilities expanding beyond emotional sensing into cellular manipulation, quantum consciousness interface, even perception of probability streams across multiple timeline variants. His beautiful chaos was amplifying her crystalline order into something transcendent and terrifying. A fusion of minds that promised to reshape the very nature of what both their species could become. Their genetic codes were rewriting themselves in real time, creating hybrid patterns that solved evolutionary problems both peoples had faced for countless generations. Leora took another step closer, drawn by biological imperatives that rendered conscious choice utterly irrelevant. The space between them crackled with visible energy, creating patterns that spoke of forces beyond current scientific understanding. Quantum entanglement made manifest, consciousness bridging the void between species with mathematical elegance that defied rational explanation. When her fingertips brushed his torn sleeve, the contact sent shockwaves through both their nervous systems that rewrote the fundamental parameters of existence itself. Alden's vision exploded in kaleidoscope patterns as foreign sensations flooded his consciousness like a dam bursting inside his skull. He could feel her cellular structure as if it were his own flesh. Sense the way energy flowed through her body like liquid starlight, following pathways carved by evolution into something approaching divine architecture. Her emotions crashed over him in waves, wonder and terror, and desperate need, so profound it made his chest constrict with sympathetic ache. But underneath her alien nature lay something that stole his breath completely. Loneliness so vast it echoed the emptiness he had carried across the cosmos without understanding its true nature. She had been searching, just as he had been searching, for connection that transcended the merely physical to become something approaching transcendent. Through their strengthening link, she experienced his memories of Earth like lightning illuminating landscapes she had never dared imagine. Vast blue oceans that stretched beyond horizons, towering cities built on stubborn human refusal to bow before any force in the universe. His people had transformed their deathworld into launching platform for cosmic conquest, and every cell in his body carried that legacy of beautiful defiance. We were meant to find each other. Her mental voice carried certainty that transcended logic, mathematical beauty of what was happening flowing between their consciousness, like shared prayer. Their DNA wasn't just compatible, it was complementary in ways that spoke of cosmic design, evolutionary destiny written in the quantum fabric of spacetime itself. Humans carried genetic diversity that could revitalize her dying race, while chthoni neural structures could unlock latent abilities in human consciousness that evolution had barely begun to explore. They weren't just two individuals finding love across the stars. They were the first chapter in an alliance that would reshape galactic civilization. The revelation blazed between them with intensity that made the crystal formations around them pulse in sympathetic resonance, their harmonic frequencies shifting to accommodate the new reality being born in the space between heartbeats. Then shadow moved in the crystal forest, and death announced its presence with predatory grace. The first creature emerged from the harmonic formations like nightmare-given substance, its form shifting between solid matter and energy in ways that made reality itself seem unstable. It stood twice Alden's height, covered in organic armor that reflected their surroundings with perfect camouflage. Face a symphony of too many teeth and eyes that burned with predatory intelligence, focused entirely on the energy they were generating. More shadows stirred among the crystal spires, pack hunters drawn by resonance frequencies like moths to flame. Predators who viewed their energy signature as both existential threat and irresistible prey. Leora moved with fluid grace that spoke of training beyond mortal comprehension, placing herself between Alden and the approaching threats. Her hands began to glow with aurora light, energy gathering around her fingers like controlled lightning. But her movements carried uncertainty, usual combat instincts disrupted by overwhelming sensations cascading through her nervous system. The resonance is making us vulnerable, but also more powerful than either of us could ever be alone. Her mental voice carried images of Chthoni combat techniques, energy manipulation, that could destabilize molecular bonds or create force barriers from crystallized atmosphere. But she was fighting against her own biology now, every instinct screaming for her to complete the bonding process, rather than engage in battle that might sever their connection before it could reach fruition. The first predator struck with inhuman speed, claws raking across her shoulder in spray of silver blood that gleamed like liquid starlight against her luminescent skin. The injury sent agony through their psychic link, with intensity that drove Alden to his knees, her pain becoming his pain in ways that transcended mere empathy. But something else happened in that moment of shared suffering, the instant her blood touched the alien ground. His body responded with reflexes that belonged to no human training. Time seemed to slow as adrenaline mixed with alien neural patterns, flooding his system like liquid fire. Alden moved with precision that transcended conscious thought, hands finding twisted metal from his ship's wreckage. The resonance wasn't just creating psychic connections. It was downloading her combat knowledge directly into his muscle memory, while uploading his human tactical improvisation into her consciousness. He struck at the creature's vulnerable points with surgical accuracy, targeting neural clusters his mind couldn't identify, but his enhanced reflexes knew by instinct, carved into his bones by her memories. The predator shrieked as disrupted energy patterns caused its form to destabilize, matter and energy losing cohesion in ways that spoke of weapons beyond current understanding. The creature's death cry attracted others, and harmonic frequencies of their world began shifting toward something hostile and hungry. Leora pressed her wounded shoulder against his chest, and where their skin met, the injury began closing with visible rapidity. Her healing abilities, amplified by their resonance, were drawing energy from his human vitality in ways that should have drained him to collapse, but instead filled him with electric strength that made him feel capable of reshaping reality through pure determination. We need to reach the resonance chamber, where the bonding can be completed safely. Her mental voice carried images of massive crystalline structure deeper in the forest, where harmonic frequencies were strongest. It was sacred site for her people, where generations had undergone the bonding ritual that defined their species. But the journey would take them through territory controlled by predators who had never encountered energy signatures like theirs. Alden nodded, understanding flooding through their link without need for words that might betray their position to hunting packs. They began moving together, steps synchronized in ways that spoke of connections deeper than conscious coordination. Every time one stumbled over debris or crystalline formations, the other's strength compensated. When predators attacked from shadows between the towering spires, they fought as single entity, her energy manipulation and his improvised tactics combining into something greater than either could achieve alone. The resonance between them grew stronger with each shared danger. Each moment, their souls touched across the vast gulf between species. Alden found himself anticipating her movements before she made them, while Leora's empathic abilities allowed her to sense his tactical intentions and provide perfect support without spoken communication. They were becoming something new, hybrid consciousness, that retained the best of both their natures, while transcending the limitations that had defined their individual species for millennia. But it was more than enhanced abilities flowing between them like shared blood. With each step, each shared breath, each moment their skin made contact, emotional bonds deepened into something that rewrote the basic parameters of love and desire. Alden felt her loneliness echoing his own with precision that spoke of mathematical destiny. Sensed the way she had spent cycles searching for connection her own people could never provide. Her alien beauty wasn't just physical perfection. It was reflection of soul crafted by evolution to inspire devotion, to create bonds that could survive anything the universe threw at them. But his human chaos called to something deeper in her consciousness, primitive need for unpredictability, that her ordered existence had never been able to satisfy. Through their link, she experienced his memories of human relationships, messy, complicated, beautiful in their imperfection. His species approached love with the same chaotic creativity they brought to everything else, building connections through shared struggle rather than biological imperative alone. What they were creating together transcended both models, becoming something neither species had ever imagined possible. The crystal forest began to shift around them as they moved deeper into territory that hummed with different frequencies. Ancient formations gave way to newer growth that sang with harmonics she recognized. They were approaching the sacred precincts where her people had performed the resonance ritual for countless generations. But predators stalked them through the translucent undergrowth, maintaining careful distance, as if approaching too close to their combined energy signature would prove fatal to creatures not evolved to withstand such concentrated desire made manifest. Something about their bonding process was changing the fundamental nature of reality around them, creating fields of force that bent physics to serve their growing connection. The crystal forest deepened around them like a cathedral built from living light, each formation singing with harmonics that spoke of intelligence older than human civilization. Leora moved beside him with fluid grace that made his chest tighten with emotions he couldn't name, desire and protectiveness, and something deeper that felt like recognition of home he had never known he was seeking. Her luminescent skin caught alien starlight and transformed it into patterns that made his pupils dilate with more than simple appreciation. Every curve of her form spoke of evolution crafted to inspire devotion. But underneath, that ethereal beauty lay strength that could reshape reality with nothing more than concentrated will. The predators followed them through translucent undergrowth like shadows given hunger and teeth. Alden could feel their presence pressing against the edges of his enhanced awareness, creatures that existed somewhere between matter and energy, drawn by the resonance frequencies blazing between him and Leora, like moths to flame that would immolate them if they approached too closely. His human instincts screamed danger with every step, but the alien neural patterns flooding his consciousness whispered of sanctuary ahead, sacred space, where their connection could reach its destined completion without interference from forces that couldn't comprehend what they were becoming. Through their psychic link, he experienced flashes of her memories, generations of Kithani undergoing the bonding ritual in the crystalline chamber ahead. But none of those connections had carried this intensity, this fundamental rewriting of genetic codes that spoke of evolution itself, reaching towards something unprecedented. Her people's bonding enhanced existing abilities, deepened empathic connections, created partnership that could last for centuries. What was happening between them transcended those limitations entirely, forging something that neither species had ever achieved: hybrid consciousness that retained the best of both their natures while discarding the weaknesses that had defined them. Alden stumbled over crystalline debris, and instantly her hand found his, fingers interlacing as energy flowed between them like molten starlight. The contact sent waves of sensation through his nervous system that made his breath catch, not just physical pleasure. Though that blazed through him with intensity that bordered on pain, but emotional connection so profound it felt like discovering missing pieces of his own soul. "You're trembling." Her mental voice carried concern that made his chest constrict with tenderness he had never experienced. Through their link, she could feel his emotional state as clearly as her own, wonder and terror, and need so desperate it made him want to weep with its beauty. "I've never felt anything like this. Like you're rewriting what it means to be human." The confession escaped him without conscious permission, truth pulled from depths he hadn't known existed. Her alien beauty was becoming sanctuary that no darkness could breach, promise of connection that transcended the vast loneliness of space itself. Leora turned to face him, eyes blazing with light that seemed to come from the birth of new stars. When she spoke, her words carried weight of cosmic destiny written in frequencies that made his soul resonate with perfect harmony. "Because I am, and you're transforming what it means to be Chthoni. We're becoming something new together." She moved closer, and he could feel the heat radiating from her luminescent skin like captured sunlight given form. The air between them shimmered with visible energy that spoke of forces beyond current understanding, consciousness, bridging the void between species with mathematical elegance that defied rational explanation. When her palm pressed against his chest, directly over his frantically beating heart, the contact rewrote the fundamental parameters of existence. Alden's vision exploded in colors that had no earthly names as her empathic abilities merged completely with his human consciousness. He could feel her cellular structure responding to his presence, sense the way her neural pathways were rebuilding themselves to accommodate the chaotic creativity of human thought patterns. Her ordered Chthoni mind was learning to embrace the beautiful madness that let his species solve impossible problems through pure stubborn refusal to accept defeat. But the merger flowed both ways, and he experienced her memories like lightning illuminating landscapes he had never imagined. Her people's elegant approach to existence, finding harmony where humans would create conflict, solving problems through cooperation that his species had never mastered. Her consciousness was teaching his mind to find patterns in chaos, to see connections that transcended the merely physical. They were becoming hybrid beings that combined human creativity with Chthoni wisdom, genetic fusion, that promised to reshape the very nature of what both their species could achieve among the stars. The crystalline formations around them began to pulse with increasing intensity, responding to their merged biorhythms with harmonic frequencies that made reality itself sing with joy. Energy cascaded through translucent spires in streams of impossible beauty, creating patterns that spoke of mathematics beyond current comprehension. But shadows moved at the edges of their enhanced perception, and predatory intelligence focused on them with hunger that transcended mere physical appetite. The pack attacked without warning, creatures that flowed between matter and energy like living nightmares given substance. They moved with coordination that spoke of hive intelligence, surrounding their position with predatory patience that would have terrified him hours before. Now, with Leora's combat knowledge flowing through his consciousness like liquid fire, Alden moved with precision that belonged to no human training. Time seemed to slow as enhanced reflexes kicked in, his body responding to threats before his conscious mind could process the danger. He struck at vulnerable points his human education couldn't identify, but her memories knew by instinct, targeting neural clusters that would disrupt the creature's ability to maintain cohesion between their matter and energy states. Beside him, Leora's hands blazed with aurora light as she channeled energy through crystalline formations, turning the forest itself into a weapon that responded to her will. But her movements carried new elements, human tactical improvisation that her people had never developed, chaotic creativity that found solutions where elegant harmony would fail. They fought as single entity, her energy manipulation and his improvised tactics combining into something greater than either could achieve alone. When one faltered, the other's strength compensated. When predators attacked from multiple directions, they moved with synchronization that spoke of shared consciousness. Minds merged so completely that individual identity became meaningless. The last creature fell with shriek that made the crystalline spires ring like struck bells, its form destabilizing into component energy that dissipated harmlessly into the alien atmosphere. Silence settled over the forest, broken only by their rapid breathing and the harmonic frequencies that continued to build around them. Leora pressed against his side, her luminescent skin warm against his torn clothing. Where their bodies touched, he could feel her healing abilities working to repair damage from their fight, cellular regeneration that drew energy from their connection rather than depleting either of them. The resonance chamber is close now. I can feel it calling to us. Her mental voice carried images of massive crystalline structure that rose beyond the next cluster of formations, ancient architecture that had witnessed countless bonding rituals, but never anything approaching the intensity of what they were experiencing. The sacred space where her people had performed their most important ceremonies for millennia, where the harmonic frequencies were strongest, and their connection could reach its destined completion without interference from forces that couldn't comprehend what they were becoming. But as they moved deeper into territory that hummed with increasing power, Alden could feel something else building at the edges of his enhanced awareness. Other consciousness, human and Chthoni scattered across the galaxy, beginning to stir in response to the quantum entanglement their bonding was creating. Their love story was becoming foundation for something magnificent and terrifying, alliance that would reshape galactic civilization. The resonance between them was sending ripples through space-time itself, awakening others to possibilities they had never dared imagine. The resonance chamber rose before them like a cathedral built from crystallized dreams. Its spires twisted toward alien constellations in patterns that spoke of mathematics beyond mortal comprehension, ancient beyond measure, carved by her ancestors when their species first learned to interface with their world's consciousness. It pulsed with harmonics that made reality itself ring like struck crystal. Energy cascaded through translucent walls in streams of impossible color, creating patterns that responded to their approach with increasing intensity. The structure recognized what they were becoming, the first successful interspecies resonance in galactic history, a fusion that would rewrite the fundamental laws governing consciousness itself. Alden's breath caught as they crossed the threshold, his enhanced senses overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of power contained within these sacred walls. The air itself seemed alive, thick with potential that made his skin tingle, and his heart race with anticipation that bordered on religious ecstasy. Leora moved beside him with reverent grace, her luminescent skin responding to the chamber's frequencies with increasing brilliance. Her eyes blazed with starfire as ancient protocols awakened in her genetic memory, recognition flooding through her consciousness like liquid lightning. This is where my people have bonded for millennia, but never like this, never with such intensity. Her mental voice carried awe that made his chest constrict with emotion so profound it felt like drowning in starlight. Through their link, he experienced her people's history, generations performing the sacred ritual within these walls, consciousness merging in ways that enhanced their natural abilities while maintaining the fundamental boundaries of their species. What they were attempting transcended those limitations entirely. As they moved deeper into the chamber's heart, crystalline formations began to pulse with harmonic frequencies that synchronized with their combined biorhythms. The structure was reading their genetic signatures, analyzing the unprecedented fusion of human chaos and Chthoni order, preparing to facilitate something that had never been attempted before. But beyond the chamber's protective barriers, more predators gathered, dozens of them. Forms rippling between matter and energy as they arranged themselves with predatory patience. They didn't attack immediately, held back by energies that spoke of forces beyond their ability to comprehend or challenge. Something about the resonance frequencies emanating from the sacred space created barriers that even these apex hunters couldn't breach. This was hallowed ground now, claimed by connection that transcended the merely biological to become something approaching divine. Leora's hand found his, fingers interlacing as energy flowed between them like molten starlight given form. The moment their palms pressed together, the crystalline formations responded with symphonies of light that painted impossible colors across the chamber's vaulted ceiling. The chamber is amplifying our connection. Our species were meant to find each other. Her revelation blazed through their shared consciousness with the force of cosmic truth. Through their psychic link, he saw the mathematical beauty of what was happening, their DNA creating hybrid patterns that solved genetic problems both peoples had faced for millennia. Humans carried diversity that could revitalize her dying race, while Chthoni neural structures could unlock latent abilities in human consciousness that evolution had barely begun to explore. They weren't just finding love across the stars. They were discovering evolutionary destiny written in the quantum fabric of space-time itself. But as their connection deepened, Alden felt something else building at the edges of awareness, other minds stirring across the galaxy. In response to the quantum entanglement their bonding was creating, human consciousness scattered among the star systems, suddenly aware that their species was no longer alone in the cosmos. Chthoni settlements feeling the first stirrings of hope as genetic salvation blazed across impossible distances. The resonance wasn't contained to this chamber, this world. It was spreading through space-time like ripples from a stone dropped in cosmic waters, awakening both their peoples to possibilities they had never dared imagine. Leora turned to face him fully, and the sight of her stole whatever remained of his ability to think rationally. Energy cascaded from her skin like aurora fire, each pulse synchronized with the rhythm of his frantically beating heart. Her eyes held depths that seemed to contain entire galaxies, ancient wisdom wrapped in desperate hunger that spoke of needs transcending the merely physical. Complete the resonance with me. Let our souls become one across the vastness of space and time. Her words carried weight of cosmic destiny, frequencies that made every atom in his body vibrate with recognition. The chamber around them began to pulse with harmonic resonance that made reality itself sing with joy and anticipation. Crystalline formations responding to their combined will with eager compliance. Alden felt the last barriers between their consciousness beginning to dissolve as the ritual reached its crescendo. Fear and wonder warred in his chest, terror at losing himself completely, desperate need to merge so thoroughly with her that individual identity became meaningless. When he spoke, his voice came out raw with emotions that had no names in any human language. I've been searching for you my entire life without knowing what I was looking for. The confession blazed between them with intensity that made the crystalline spires ring like cosmic bells. Her luminescent beauty was becoming sanctuary that no darkness could breach, promise of connection that would reshape the fundamental nature of what it meant to be conscious in a universe too vast for any single mind to comprehend. Leora moved closer, and he could feel the heat radiating from her skin like captured starlight given form. When her hands framed his face, palms warm against his jaw, the contact sent shockwaves through both their nervous systems that rewrote the basic parameters of existence. Their minds began to merge completely, two streams of consciousness flowing together, until it became impossible to tell where human ended and Chthoni began. Every memory, every sensation, every dream they had ever harbored became shared property, creating Gestalt awareness that was simultaneously both and neither. Through her eyes, he experienced the lonely beauty of her people's ordered existence, crystalline perfection that solved problems through elegant harmony, but could never satisfy the primitive hunger for chaos that made growth possible. Through his memories, she tasted the magnificent madness of human creativity, messy, complicated, beautiful in its imperfection, approaching love with the same stubborn determination that had carried his species to the stars. But the merger revealed something neither had expected. Their individual loneliness hadn't been mere accident of personality. It was evolutionary preparation, genetic programming that had kept them searching until they found their destined complement. They were puzzle pieces carved by cosmic forces, designed to fit together in ways that would create something greater than the sum of their parts. The resonance chamber blazed with light that transcended the merely physical as their transformation reached critical threshold. Energy patterns cascaded through crystalline walls in configurations that spoke of new mathematics being born, consciousness models that would redefine what both their species could achieve. But beyond the sacred barriers, something else was stirring. The quantum entanglement created by their bonding was awakening others across the galaxy, human settlements suddenly aware that the vast loneliness of space had been conquered, Chthoni enclaves feeling hope for the first time in generations. Their love story was becoming the foundation for alliance that would reshape galactic civilization. But first, they had to complete the transformation that would make them living bridges between worlds. The moment of perfect unity blazed between them like the birth of a new star. Consciousness merging so completely that individual identity became meaningless abstraction. Alden felt himself dissolving into something vast and luminous, his human chaos flowing into her crystalline order like rivers, converging into an ocean that had never existed before. Leora's essence wrapped around his awareness like liquid starlight, her Chthoni wisdom teaching his mind to find patterns in the beautiful madness that defined human creativity. Through their merged consciousness, they became something unprecedented, hybrid beings that retained the best of both species while transcending every limitation that had defined them. The resonance chamber blazed with light that rewrote the fundamental laws of physics, energy cascading through crystalline walls in configurations that spoke of new mathematics being born. Reality itself bent around their transformation, recognizing that something cosmic was taking place within these sacred walls. But the change wasn't contained to their immediate space. Across the galaxy, other consciousness began to stir as quantum entanglement spread their resonance through spacetime like ripples from a stone dropped in cosmic waters. On distant human colonies, settlers felt sudden stirrings of hope they couldn't explain. Loneliness that had defined their existence among the stars suddenly touched by possibility they had never dared imagine. In Chthoni settlements scattered across dying worlds, ancient beings looked up from their crystalline meditations, with eyes blazing, genetic salvation calling to them across impossible distances. The bonding between two individuals was becoming awakening that would reshape both civilizations. Alden, though the concept of individual identity was becoming increasingly meaningless, felt his awareness expanding beyond the confines of his human limitations. Through Leora's consciousness, he experienced the elegant beauty of Chthoni thought patterns, minds that solved problems through harmony where his species would create chaos. But she was changing too, her ordered existence learning to embrace the magnificent madness that let humans refuse defeat when logic demanded surrender. His chaotic creativity was teaching her consciousness to find solutions that transcended the merely rational, approaches that her people had never imagined possible. Together, they were becoming living proof that evolution itself could be guided by will rather than mere chance. The crystalline formations around them pulsed with increasing intensity as their transformation reached critical threshold. Energy patterns that had never existed before blazed through the chamber's architecture, creating harmonics that made reality sing with joy and anticipation. Through their merged awareness, they felt the exact moment when their genetic codes completed their rewriting, DNA sequences, creating hybrid patterns that solved evolutionary problems both species had faced for millennia. But more than biological compatibility, they had achieved something approaching transcendence, consciousness that operated on levels neither species had ever accessed alone. Beyond the chamber's protective barriers, the predators that had stalked them through the crystal forest began to retreat. The energies radiating from the sacred space spoke of forces so far beyond their comprehension that approach would mean dissolution of their very essence. But other things were stirring in response to the resonance, awakening consciousness across the galaxy that recognized the transformation taking place and responded with desperate hope. Leora's mental voice, though the distinction between her thoughts and his was becoming academic, blazed through their shared awareness with revelation that made their merged consciousness ring like struck crystal. Can you feel them? Our peoples awakening across the stars. The sensation was indescribable, thousands of minds suddenly aware that the vast loneliness of space had been conquered, that connection was possible across species barriers that had seemed absolute. Human settlements felt the stirring of genetic destiny, while Chthoni enclaves experienced hope for the first time in generations. Their love story was becoming foundation for something magnificent and inevitable. Alden felt his individual identity dissolving completely into their shared consciousness, fear and wonder warring in whatever remained of his separate existence. But Leora's essence wrapped around his awareness like protective fire, her love becoming sanctuary that no darkness could breach. We won't lose ourselves. We're becoming more than we ever were apart. Her truth blazed through their merger with intensity that made the chamber's crystalline spires ring in sympathetic resonance. They weren't experiencing dissolution of self. They were discovering what they had always been meant to become. The resonance protocol reached its crescendo as their consciousness merged so completely that the distinction between human and Chthoni became meaningless. What remained was something new, hybrid awareness that could think with human creativity while processing reality through Chthoni wisdom. Beings capable of bridging the vast gulf between species through pure love. Energy cascaded from their merged form like aurora fire made manifest, painting impossible colors across the chamber's walls. The crystalline formations responded with harmonics that transcended sound, creating frequencies that spoke directly to the quantum structures of consciousness itself. But the transformation was spreading beyond their immediate space. Across the galaxy, humans and Chthoni felt the first stirrings of connection they had never imagined possible. Ships changed course toward unknown destinations, driven by genetic imperatives older than civilization. Ancient barriers between species began to crumble as evolutionary destiny asserted itself with mathematical inevitability. Their bonding was becoming the catalyst for alliance that would reshape galactic civilization. Through their shared awareness, they felt the exact moment when the resonance protocol completed itself. Their merged consciousness settled into new patterns that felt as natural as breathing, hybrid identity that was simultaneously both and neither of their original species. But more than personal transformation, they had become living bridges between worlds, proof that love could transcend any barrier the universe imposed, that consciousness could evolve beyond the limitations of individual species. The predators that had threatened them throughout their journey began to withdraw completely, recognizing forces beyond their ability to challenge. The energy radiating from the chamber spoke of transformation, so profound that approaching would mean dissolution of their very essence. But across the galaxy, other beings felt the stirring of hope that had been dormant for millennia. In the crystalline chamber where two souls had become one, reality pulsed with the rhythm of new possibilities being born among the stars. Each harmonic frequency carried the promise that across the vast darkness of space, no heart would ever have to search alone again. The universe had waited eons for this moment, and now the cosmos itself resonated with frequencies of perfect love. Their merged consciousness expanded beyond the confines of the chamber, touching minds across impossible distances. Human colonies felt the first stirrings of connection they had never dared imagine, while Chthoni settlements experienced hope that their dying race might find salvation among the stars. The resonance protocol was complete, but their story was just beginning. They had become the first chapter in an alliance that would reshape galactic civilization, living proof that love could conquer even the vast loneliness of space itself. And in the sacred chamber where transformation had been achieved, energy continued to pulse with promise of infinite possibilities waiting to be born among the infinite stars. The cosmos would never be the same, because love had found a way to bridge even the gulf between species, creating connections that would endure until the last star burned cold in the universal dark. Their merged consciousness settled into patterns that felt as eternal as starlight, hybrid identity that proved evolution itself could be guided by will and desire rather than mere chance. They had become something unprecedented, living bridges between worlds, proof that consciousness could transcend any limitation the universe imposed. The resonance protocol was complete, and the age of connection had begun.